Hello. Hello. My name is Ralph Stone. I'm a board member of the Montana Human Rights Network and a steering committee member of the Missoula Advocates for Human Rights. Tonight we're going to be discussing the World Church of the Creator. We have a panel here in the studio and we have a live call-in show scheduled. Before introducing my fellow panelists, I want to read to you a brief statement about the World Church of the Creator. What you hear from Matt Hale is one side of the story, and there is indeed another side of the story. This will be a brief exposition of the history of the church, and we will get into more details later. The Church of the Creator was founded in 1973 by Ben Klassen, who was a Ukrainian immigrant who was raised in Canada and moved to Florida, where he became a state legislator. He found a home in the American far right. He was supported by the John Birch Society, and in 1968 he participated in the George Wallace presidential campaign. His real niche came when he established the World Church of the Creator. He subsequently wrote several books, including Nature's Eternal Religion and other anti-Semitic and racist screeds, they can only be called screeds, and anointed himself Pontifex Maximus, the leader of this so-called church. And let me say at the outset that the church is strictly a racist construct. That's the religion. That's the church. Well, over the next decade of the 70s, Klassen proceeded to build a brutal, violent empire. By the early 1990s, the organization included chapters in 20 states and 8 foreign countries. Klassen preached that Adolf Hitler was a religious prophet, that Christianity is a Jewish plot, and that members of the church should practice Rahowa, racial holy war, which he proclaimed as inevitable. Racial holy war, Klassen wrote, was, quote, the ultimate and only solution. It is now either them or us. We want to make damn sure it is we who survive. This violent rhetoric became reality on May 17, 1991, when a Florida member of the church, the Reverend George Loeb, murdered Harold Mansfield Jr., an African-American Gulf War veteran. He was subsequently sentenced, that is, Loeb was, to 40 years in prison and is now serving time. 2 years after the murder, police in Salinas, California, arrested the self-proclaimed Washington State COTC director, Jeremiah Niesel, and another COTC member from Washington. While searching their car officers uncovered a cache of weapons, racist literature, and a page from the Portland, Oregon telephone directory listing Jewish agencies and synagogues. Kniesel later confessed to involvement in the July 29, 1993 firebombing of an NAACP office in Tacoma, Washington. By 1990, Klassen was ready to anoint a successor. He first selected Rudy Stanko, an Eastern Montana COTC activist, but Stanko declined the job when he was released from prison in 1991. He had been sentenced for selling tainted meat to school lunch programs. In May 1992, Klassen chose another successor, a man named Charles Altvater of Baltimore, as the new Pontifex Maximus. But Altvater was arrested and convicted later that year of reckless endangerment after placing a bomb on the porch of a Baltimore County police officer. If you get the impression that the Church of the Creator has a violent past, prior to Benjamin Smith's rampage in July of 1999, you're correct. At least 10 members of the church either pled guilty or were convicted of racist-motivated crimes in the decade of the 90s. Klassen named 2 more men as leaders before taking his own life in 1993 at the age of 75. By then, the church was in serious decline. It remained for Matt Hale, who was appointed Pontifex Maximus in 1996, to restore the vigor, such as it was, of the Church of the Creator. And this is what Hale has proceeded to do with some success, we might say. Hale doesn't fit the stereotypical image of a white supremacist. He's a graduate of the Southern Illinois School of Law. He's young, he's bright, he wears starched white shirts and a nice tie. He's a concert violinist, he's articulate. But he had also built a long record of activity in white racist organizations before his entrance into the Church of the Creator. He had been active in the American White Supremacist Party and the National Socialist White Americans Party, among other groups, before assuming the mantle of leadership of the church. Hale lives in East Peoria, Illinois, in his parents' home, but he travels widely, he speaks often, he skillfully uses the internet to appeal to children, and he has directed his appeal in recent years to women and to prisoners. But he hasn't forgotten the appeal to aging bigots as well as young skinheads. So Hale's programs that you have watched tonight, or perhaps you're just tuning in, will feature Hale justifying the activities of his church. And we'll have a lot to say about that. I want now to introduce our two panelists. On my right is Ron Wheeler, a longtime social activist in Missoula, a retired high school biology teacher, a founder, indeed an originator, of MCAT and the first president of MCAT, and a person who has direct experience with the World Church of the Creator. In 1998, when the church held its annual rendezvous in Superior, where one of its reverends lives, Ron was there protesting the church and taking photographs. So he brings a history of activity in the area of social change and human rights that is valuable to our community. On my left is Jeff Rintz, a professor of law at the University of Montana. Constitutional and criminal law is his specialty. He's been there 8 years. Previous to that, he was the ACLU of Montana's legal director, and before that, he was the practicing law in Chicago, Illinois. This year, he had the distinction of appearing before the United States Supreme Court to argue a free speech case. So our panelists tonight are certainly prepared to talk about Matt Hale and the philosophy that he brings, and we hope that callers out there will give us their reactions to this program. The message of hate that we've heard just prior to this show is a despicable message, but MCAT is airing it, as it has every right to do, and of course free speech is Matt Hale's right, and it's our responsibility as citizens to answer. So I'd like to ask Ron first what his impressions are of the show that we've seen, and in general what he thinks about Matt Hale and the Church of the Creator, since he's seen them up close, within a few feet of them.
Too close.
Too close.
Well, let's see. David Duke one day decided to dress up in a shirt and tie and make believe that the Ku Klux Klan was an okay progressive organization. He came to Montana. We showed pictures of him in his Nazi uniform. He was not welcomed here. Matt Hale has taken a page out of the KKK book and decided that a white shirt and a tie and some quiet words on television will fool the people that he addresses, at least long enough to get his message across. Matt Hale in person and in his own environs is a very different animal than we saw tonight. When I saw Matt Hale, he was standing at the entrance to Superior, Montana, just down the road, with about 15 or 20 of his cohorts. He himself was dressed in a pair of black pants with a black and red t-shirt with his Holy War insignia, and was shouting epithets and doing Nazi salutes, you know the one, with several half-naked, fully tattooed Nazi skinheads, several shrieking women also tattooed, I believe with the skinhead group. One of his local leaders, Dan Hassett, dressed in his camouflage fatigues and his reminiscent Nazi shirt. I believe he was armed, as was Slim Deerdorf. And I think that seeing them in that milieu, yelling and screaming hate messages to everyone who came by, begging for support, puts him in the perspective that he much more deserves.
I think that is a more realistic perspective than seeing the Matt Hale that we saw on TV. Jeff, what's your impression of this man that presumes to be a Pontifex Maximus?
I think in any other setting he'd be a Pontifex Minimus. And I have to say, I don't know how he completed law school with what I had to view were not exactly polished analytical skills. Nevertheless, it is a good thing that MCAT is showing his stuff. And I say that not because it's a good thing that his message is being spread, but that were MCAT to refuse and this become a big fight, a big issue over whether it's the right thing to do or not, Matt Hale will get a lot more play than he did tonight.
Let's see if we have a call here. I think we lost our first caller. I said that the violence perpetrated by Benjamin Smith, and I think it is worthwhile noting that violence in a bit more detail than Matt Hale noted it. 2 persons were killed, 9 persons were wounded by Matt Hale in a 3-day shooting rampage that led him from Skokie, Illinois to Central Illinois, and then subsequently on to Bloomington, Indiana, where he shot his last victim, a Korean American. Hey, let's... Hello?
We don't know.
No. All right.
Hello?
Oh,
Hello, are you there?
Yeah, my name.
No, it looks like we've lost you for the time being. Try again. Well, Matt Hale had said in his program that he did not justify the killing that...
Don't interrupt.
Hello?
Hello?
Am I on the air?
You are on the air. What's your name?
My name is Emmett. I'm
Yeah.
also known as Open Dog. I do the awful truth about society. There seems to be some sort of disconnection with the phone lines or something. Is anything wrong?
Well, I think it's probably our maiden voyage, if you will. And we're just learning the buttons to punch. But go right ahead. What's your reaction?
Well, I was really surprised. You know, I do the awful truth about society. I'm a Mohawk punk rocker myself. I do show, exposing the evils of society from a Christian, anarchist, and punk point of view and everything. I myself, I'm against racism, and I've seen the other stuff Matt Hale has done. I've seen him on KPIX. It's horrible. I have read Christian identity literature that has been pretty much handed out to me, which is nothing what Matt Hale was trying to describe. Christian identity literature, if you've ever read it, if any of you have, is really horrible. It treats Jews and blacks as second-class citizens to be almost destroyed and everything. And I find it, as a punk rocker, personally repugnant. By the way, if I just might say, for the record, that some people in the community in Missoula have criticized me as a neo-Nazi, and I find that very offensive, just because I have a mohawk and a leather jacket. Most punks are not. But I do have kind of a question. I think you were discussing this as well. My reaction was, I was kind of shocked by Matt Hale. He was a sleeping pill. I was trying to keep myself awake while watching his boring, uninteresting diatribe about literally nothing. I wrote a few stuff down, but once he got to the end of the show, he started, of course, preaching his book. So which was one of them, White Man's Bible, about how the races must preserve themselves to the... I can't remember everything, I'd have to grab my notes, but what he was talking about was pretty much putting man, you and I, on the level of brute animals to fight for survival, which is pretty much what Hitler taught. And, but quite frankly, I think the Matt Hale that we saw tonight is not the Matt Hale or the the World Church of the Creator that we have seen before. The people that have had the literature dropped off to them at their doorstep or read into the other literature, and I myself, have read some of the stuff. It's pretty much going back to the days of the Nazis. And I would also like to say that I have been a victim of racism, if I don't mind saying, because I myself am white, but I was in a very, it can go a lot of ways. I was in a tough, we have to address racism at all levels and have to learn to love one another because at the Christian level. Because when I was in Tucson, Arizona, I was forced to a junior high school called Wakefield Junior High, in which I was nearly beaten up every day for being white. They were, Mexican Americans and such like this, and I can't blame them for being bitter, but they were very, very, very angry at me just for my skin color. So I have experienced pretty much kind of the brutality of life, which makes Matt Hale's little program pale in comparison. So
Emmett,
hello?
this is Ron Wheeler. How are you?
I'm all right, yeah.
Listen, I agree with you that Matt tonight was a wolf in sheep's clothing, but if you watch some of the subsequent programs, I think you'll see more and more of his true colors. So he's going to reveal more than he did tonight, and we'll be discussing that down the road. But we have another phone call we'd like to get to. But if we get a lull and you have some more you want to chime in on, feel free to call, and it's nice to hear from you.
Thanks. In the next subsequent weeks, then, you mean?
Yes.
Next week.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent, because I probably will be going on MCAT about this if and some of the other stuff I've, read and everything. But he should have brought everything on the air tonight, then. That kind of...
Well, that's not the way it works, but we'll talk about him some more later, Emmett. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for your call.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye. Hello there.
Ron Wheeler,
Yes,
how are you, sir?
I'm well.
Who are we talking to?
I'm just a local viewer, and I'd just like to make a point about something that I happened to notice about Mr. Hale's presentation, and that was that he seemed to be doing his best to make himself ultra palatable.
Yes.
And I also have had experience in a general sort of way of a mindset such as that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on the receiving end of a general mindset such as I was displayed this evening in Mr. Hale's presentation.
You were a victim of a racist?
Not racist, no. I was involved in an organization that was calling itself Christian, disguising itself with Christianity, but it was disguising something else that's sort of irrelevant to our conversation tonight. I'd rather stick to this issue and make the comment that, specifically that, because of these behaviors that I happen to notice, and probably more of your callers as the program progresses will tell you that his desire to be palatable, to fit in, should not go unnoticed, should not go unchallenged, simply because that could be dangerous.
Well, I think you're absolutely right that we do have to expose that kind of simulated goodness that he displays. And we thank you for your call.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you. Yeah. And
call again, will you please?
I will be, and I will be watching these issues very closely.
Great, thanks.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Ron, do you think he'd draw more viewership if he were more outrageous on the air?
Do I?
Mhm.
I'd hate to give him any clues, but yeah, I do.
I do too.
I think that, just as, yeah, if he were sensational, in fact, I think more people would watch. I think he'd draw an audience just for that. But I think he'll get that way. You can't do 47 programs and hide on all 47 of them.
Sure,
so.
sure.
Hello?
Didn't get it. What? Anyone there? No? Okay. Well, call back, folks.
I had mentioned before that Matt Hale seemed to have a very mild reaction to the church, to the Benjamin Smith attacks, and didn't express any remorse immediately. And I wanted to read you a quotation that from Hale just 2 weeks after the Benjamin Smith shooting rampage. And it went like this. Well, let me... Hale said that if people are willing to die for their soil,
We'll get it.
willing to die for money, willing to die for fame, then certainly we must be willing to offer that sacrifice, if it came to it, for our own blood, for our own family, our racial family, our white race. We intend to push people off the fence. We are doing this and we will continue to do it. We will sit people down and tell them that they have only two choices ultimately. They are either with the white race or they are against the white race. No one can say that it is good for the white race to be integrated with the niggers and other mud people. No one can say that it is good for white people to give our money to the non-whites. No one can say that it's good to mongrelize with the non-whites. That was Matt Hale 2 weeks after the Smith shooting. That wasn't the...
Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
You're on the air.
How are you?
Fine.
Hi, I am a visitor actually here in Missoula on business. I'm actually black. And I was just flipping through the channels and I happened to see Mr. Hale talking. And first I was looking, I was like, wow, I'm surprised because I'm about 30 years old. And I've only read about a lot of different racism and actually haven't experienced it personally in my life.
Where are you from?
I'm actually from Seattle.
Okay.
And I'd just like to commend you guys. This is a little different coming from this side to see a town like Missoula standing up and taking action that, you know, even though Missoula is a little bit homogeneous, their views are nothing like Mr. Hale's.
Well, you know, if we keep these guys in the dark, we don't know what they look like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we have programs like this, we may be a little more heterogeneous in the future. That's what we'd like. We don't want a lily white Missoula or any other kind of one race or color. So we really appreciate your calling. If do you have any problems of this kind in Seattle?
Again, I've been in a fortunate situation. I've been to school back in Boston, and I've never been in a situation where I've been stopped or anything that's happened to me. I have friends that it's happened to, and obviously I'm aware of my history, but I personally have never been involved in it. And I guess I do have friends as well as myself, maybe sometimes taken aback a little bit when we see it, but from a good perspective that there are individuals that are white that really care about people that are for racism and who are trying to, just promote the hatred.
Well,
So
we're all in this together, aren't we?
absolutely. I mean, I've been here to Missoula. This is like the 5th time I've been here in 6 months, and it's always been a great experience for me.
Well, that's great.
Good to hear.
Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Come back.
Alrighty.
Hello, you're on the air.
Yes, thank you. Well, I've been watching your program, and I prefer not to give my name. I can be just as paranoid as Mr. Hale.
It's fine.
But his, aside from the question of whether the whole series should be broadcast, I don't know why MCAT has to be hostage to Mr. Hale in the name of free speech. I wonder how many other community stations or access stations have been approached and have accepted are justified broadcasting his series, but nevertheless, it having been broadcast, at least tonight, some of Mr. Hale's reasoning or his way of analyzing things just seems so ridiculous. I mean, he justifies the killings by his friends, past friends, because of reasons, either threat to the white race or other things, and yet at the same time, I'm pretty sure blacks who he says have been criminal law have equally good reasons for what they've done or the past. One can argue things to a certain extent, but one has to take responsibility nevertheless for what they do and accept the consequences. But as far as this matter of not having the white race polluted, I'm pretty sure of going back to the beginning of the black presence in the United States or this continent, who was it that brought them here, brought the blacks here? And I mean, they have every right to be here, and once they're here now, and have all the rights of citizens. But in the course of slavery days, I think it's pretty well known that many of the slaves, or many of the blacks or African Americans, whatever the correct term is, are not pure black anymore because of the intermixing caused by the, I don't know exactly rape, but nevertheless the exchange or fathering of children by their white slave masters. So so ridiculous for Mr. Hale to kind of bring up this whole matter of purity of the white race.
I think that's a good point. And let me have Ron Wheeler respond to your first point about having this program of Hale's on the air, the free speech issue that you raised, because I think Ron has faced this before, and Jeff may also want to chime in on this.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on everything, but the first concept that MCAT is somehow held hostage by Matt Hale. The truth is that MCAT is held hostage by all the citizens of Missoula. And in my opinion, it is unfortunate that one of the citizens in Missoula has chosen to bring us the Matt Hale series. That citizen is a reverend of the Church of the Creator, and that's Dan Hassett. MCAT's mission is to allow broadcasting either locally produced or imported, presented by any member of the community. And MCAT does not have the right to decide on which point of view will be aired and which won't. So MCAT is forced by its mission, and by the First Amendment, by the way, to air all of these legally presented programs, no matter how distasteful they are. Certainly what you're going to see over the next few weeks, or even months if we have to run it all, is going to be a lot of distasteful video. But better that he have a chance to say his piece than we all are forced to be quiet. So what we've chosen to do at MCAT and in Missoula traditionally is to promote more speech rather than less. And that's why the program that you're watching right now is on the air. What we're trying to do is to present a balance to what I think is some very seriously unbalanced people. And that's why we're here. Thanks. I thought that was cute too.
Yeah.
But the First Amendment, probably you should talk about.
Yeah, as Ron said, MCAT is sponsored by the city of Missoula, and that means that if you engage in something that's called viewpoint discrimination, that is, if you keep someone off the air because you disagree with their message when you're allowing everyone else on the air, you run into some pretty serious problems. That's a First Amendment violation.
Yeah, well, I think it's a matter of proportion. Certainly a couple of broadcasts, gives him a say, but to have a whole series going on for a year, that just seems way out of proportion. Naturally, he's trying to gain followers in this community, and I'm sure he will. There are some people kind of vulnerable to his views, and I don't know what effect that will have, but nevertheless, it just takes one or two people to then do things in the name of their belief to go out and commit murders and such. So these killings at the high schools in recent years, they were by disturbed children, and I suppose Mr. Hay would like to excuse these killings by his friend Ben. I forget his last name.
Smith.
No.
Well, if tonight's show was any indication, it doesn't strike me as going to persuade a whole lot of people.
Well, it just takes a few, but nevertheless, I'm saying there was someone who requested it, but then therefore to have to broadcast a whole year's worth of programs, I mean, things. I don't think it's denying free speech to give him a say, but it's a matter of balance too, as we were saying, as far as things worthy of discussion. I mean, there are certain local issues or problems, legitimate differences of opinion by reasonable thinking people, but to have this something worthy of discussion for a whole year, I mean, anybody in their right mind would, think it's really nothing of that people of any kind of I don't use any judgmental words, people
Oh, feel free.
of any balance themselves, so to speak, would think this is something that's really a critical issue that needs a whole year of give and take.
Let me have Ron and Jeff make a final response. We have another caller waiting, so I really appreciate the point you're making. And please call us back, because we need this kind of interchange, and we need your viewpoint to counter what you see as that real threat of a year of programming.
I just want to make a short comment, and that is that, again, I agree with you. It's hard to think about facing a year of Matt Hale. On the other hand, the regulations at MCAT allow for series production, and you can't get a full year, but you can get several months guaranteed you if there's space. Now, I would hope that MCAT space would be taken up with much more productive programming,
Too, thank you.
and that's your responsibility and my responsibility. So we have to get the people with better ideas onto the air, or certainly we're going to give up seeing better television. But
Good.
Thanks for calling.
We want good money to drive out bad.
There you go.
Hello there, you're on the air.
Hi.
Thanks for being patient.
That's okay. I just have a few comments. One, I would like to thank Mr. Wheeler for he's had first-hand contact with Matt Hale, and we've seen him tonight on TV, or as he's been on the news in the past in our town, all in his suit and tie. But Ron had seen him like he really is. And thank you for telling people how he really is.
It's pretty awful.
And the other thing is, the guy before talking about having a whole year dedicated to him, I'd rather, not that I want to listen to what he says, but his views are important for me to listen to, because I have a biracial child, and, but I'd rather have him on the TV for a half an hour every week than here in this city.
You got me mobilized.
Yeah.
You got me out of bed.
I don't know how many people realize, and I could be false, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, that he had actually applied for a law license here
That's true.
That's right.
and was denied. So it could be worse. We could have him here writing it.
Hanging out a shingle.
I'm sorry?
He could be here with his shingle hung out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you have to take the good with the bad, and obviously he's bad, but at least he's not here living in this city.
No, but we do have Dan Hassan.
Now, I've had contact with him,
Uh-huh.
and he's just odd.
Well, he's worse than odd when you see him with a sidearm.
Oh, see, that would just scare the death out of me.
Yeah, well, it scared the death out of me, too.
I had contact with him when they had the little
The
box party.
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, and he's just a little odd.
Yeah,
So he's scary too, but it could be worse. We could have Matt here.
yeah, I agree. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi. I'd just like to commend all three of you and MCAT for airing programming like this, because I think it's so important if there are people like Matt Hale or Dan Hazlitt in Missoula. I want to know that they're around. And I think this kind of open discussion is important for anybody who might be leaning that way, because they need to hear the callers calling in. This is what Missoula is. What you're hearing now is the makeup of this town and the way people
Right.
feel, and I think we make them feel unwelcome.
We got to keep in mind, they don't like sunshine, but they do like the spotlight.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. This is good and important work. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Well, this whole issue of whether Matt Hale deserves an audience of Missoula for 52 weeks is one that I'm sure will continue to be voiced. But I think the point that you're making about them not wanting sunshine but wanting the spotlight, and the fact that callers can express themselves is what we need to keep in mind.
Yeah, you got to remember that although we've got a right to free speech, that it doesn't mean that we have a right to speak freely without condemnation or without criticism. You know, we are responsible to our neighbors for whatever we say, and our neighbors are free to condemn us. And that's the way it's supposed to work.
Well, I think it goes even further than that. I think that there's a very thin line between the kind of preaching, if I can say that Matt Hale does as the head of his church, and the sort of violence that ensues from that preaching. There's a very thin line separating legal responsibility for the acts themselves. And I'm sure that from time to time, Mr. Hale is going to be stepping over that line. I'm sure he's done it many times in the past and hasn't been found out. But if we keep shining a light on him, I would love to see him prosecuted. And I think that eventually, maybe he will be prosecuted and found responsible for the crimes of his minions.
Well, a suit has been brought, at least one suit has been brought on behalf of, I think it was a Decatur minister who was shot, and this person, I think his name is Anderson, has filed suit against Hale and the church as being responsible for Smith's behavior. And I know that in 1994, the Southern Poverty Law Center won a $1 million lawsuit against the church at that time in Classen for the murder that took place in Florida, the Loeb murder. So these lawsuits, whether they're the Aryan Nations over in Idaho, which the Southern Poverty Law Center just won a case against the Aryans there, or whether it's cases against the Ku Klux Klan, there's adequate precedent. And that line between advocacy of speech and behavior, we know is a thin line. I don't think anyone can doubt that when they hear Matt Hale or Ben Klassen saying, "We believe in racial holy war, we believe that Jews should be swatted aside, we believe that mud races are inferior," and they celebrate Adolf Hitler, what are we to believe? That this is simply an antiseptic little group that believes in free speech? They would be the first to deny free speech to the people that they characterize as lower races. That's should be obvious to our viewers, to anyone who watches, even this polite, sanitized version of the church that Matt Hale tries to portray. This is a dangerous group. Don't mistake those words for the lack of real danger. And we should, as viewers, as people who care, never forget that there are victims out there of Matt Hale. And I don't just mean people who have been killed or wounded. Every time a terrorist acts, and that's what Benjamin Smith's behavior was terrorism. Every time you have a terrorist act like that, every time you have a Matt Hale coming on the air like this white revolution and saying...
Well, calling it terrorism is putting too nice a gloss on it.
Too nice a gloss.
Too nice a gloss. That makes him a political prisoner, and he's not. He's just some creep who picked up a gun and in the name of his beliefs rode down the street, spotted someone with color who was minding his own business and shot him dead. And calling that terrorism, simply giving him too much credit.
Well, I think that's true. On the other hand, I think his acts were meant to do more than kill those people. In killing those people, I think he meant to terrify other people like them, the people that he hates, Jews, blacks,
I deal with
Puerto
prisoners.
Ricans,
I deal with prisoners every day.
Yeah.
Burglars and thieves
Right.
and rapists. Every one of them engage in the same act of terror.
I see
And I
your
don't
point.
call them terrorists.
Right.
I think the
right.
distinction in this case, and
hate
this is a
criminal.
debatable point, but this kind of violence is linked to association with a particular racist or religious group. It's not a random act of
Right.
killing whoever's in the way. We have a call here on line 1. Hello?
Hi, I'm someone who lives in Missoula. I didn't watch Matt Hale. I think I have a pretty good idea. I've met Dan, and he's talked to me, and I think that human hatred is always an ugly thing. But I get a little disturbed hearing so much put on Dan Hastert too.
Hassett.
Yeah.
Put on him in what?
Well, it just, he's one person here, and yeah, he has access to MCAT and puts the show on, and he's interested in these views, but I think very, very few others hopefully are watching this. I don't know. I know there are a lot of incidents that are racially motivated even here in Missoula.
Right.
I've seen them, but I do, it's kind of negative just to put, I know it's Dan who's bringing the shows here, but...
wouldn't you say that he is sort of the creme de la creme? There are ordinary racists, garden variety racists, but this kind of racism that's represented by Hale and Dan Hassett is something pretty special when they call for a racial holy war.
Well, we see an awful lot of that in the Mideast too, don't we? And I think anybody who has eyes to see where it leads. It just leads to generation after generation of people killing each other, and they're, you get to where you have 8-year-olds who are armed killing each other, and I think that hopefully in this country we don't want to take that course.
Well, what do you think
But we also have enough tolerance to see that some people have aversion to people of other races. It's not just whites. It's not, you can find individuals of every race who want to stay with their own people. And I think we need to try to find another, lots of different ways to deal with this, but hopefully more positive ones, because when I turned your show on, I just thought that the little block party that you had outside Dan's, that kind of disturbed me too. He's one person.
Well, Benjamin Smith was one person too, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, I didn't watch the show on Benjamin
Well,
Smith, frankly. I didn't find it interesting. I don't Matt Hale, I don't have time to listen to.
Well, what do you think?
I did listen to you guys, though, for a little bit, and
Thanks.
the thing is, I have met Dan a couple times in passing. I know some of his...
Has he been armed when you met him?
Frankly, I don't know. I'm not
Well,
concerned
he
about
wears
that.
he wears his gun on his hip outside where people can see it. Was he wearing camouflage clothing?
No, not when I met him, no.
Well, you see, that's sort of what's going on here. We just saw a program with Matt Hale, who was a nice, soft-spoken young white male who preaches killing and hatred. You may have found Dan Hassett in a coat and tie. I found him in fatigues, carrying a large bore pistol on his side, yelling racial epithets at me across a highway. So I have a very different view than you do. I really don't feel particularly sorry for him, and I'm very, very happy that he's outnumbered.
Well, I'm not sorry for him. It's just, he is who he is.
No. He doesn't get off that easy. Nobody gets off that easy.
Well, I've seen it. I have some Asian refugees who garden at my house, and I have seen high school kids come out and start yelling at him and come running in and called 911.
Pretty awful.
Because it happens. And
No, that's too passive. Hate in people makes that stuff happen. Stuff doesn't just happen.
Hate makes it happen, but and we do have mechanisms for it. But when
what are they?
A couple of big football players enter my property and start abusing people, I'm not going to go and run and get a sidearm and
you call the
finish
police.
them off, But then what would be an appropriate response in that
Call the
situation?
police, write a letter to the editor, go and speak to the schools.
Confront them.
I've tried
Confront 'em.
calling in when they had talk shows. I've tried, not back on when they had them on the radio more.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's still a lot of racism everywhere. We all talk about tolerance in Missoula, but their hatred is everywhere. And it's still unfortunate.
Well, you sound like you're resigned to it, that it's everywhere.
I'm not resigned, but I realize what human nature is. And I try to be a good person, raise my kids to be good people, and to speak up when they see it. I know my daughter used to stand up for all the Hmong kids in the schoolyard when they were being called nigger, but it still goes on every single day, and the school does nothing.
Just from a biological point of view, it seems to me that human beings have evolved in a very special way. And that is where most animals depend on instinct, fixed behavioral patterns to react to certain conditions. We've evolved in a way that allows us to approach unique conditions with unique behaviors. That's sort of what gives us whatever domination we have on the planet. In other words, I would like to say that although I do understand that there are social pressures that force people into certain kinds of behaviors, in the end they are responsible for themselves.
Well, this is true, but responsible, you say responsible to their neighbors and being condemned by their neighbors, but when I know that it's going on in the schools at every level in every district.
Never went on in my classroom, not for long.
Well, I tell you, I have one daughter graduated last year and one just started high school, and it's getting worse every year. I pulled my daughter out of C.S. Porter for 8th grade and homeschooled her because the environment was so corrupt. I didn't want her there.
Well, I think that this is an issue that should never be ignored. You got to get on that. You got to stay on it. You owe it to your kids, and you owe it to everybody else. So I encourage you to take that one on head on. Teachers have a responsibility. Schools have a responsibility, and if they're not living up to them, we have to make them do so. And if you have to be the spark...
We try, but you feel like Sisyphus, pushing that rock up a hill every day.
That's the way it goes.
It rolls down on you.
Yep.
But you're pushing it up the hill when you push it.
Yeah, well, you got to keep pushing. But
you got to keep pushing.
Day, you fall down and it rolls on you.
Yeah.
That's how it feels to work with District 1.
Well, it might feel better if you would, the next time you speak to Dan Hassett, simply ask him a little more closely about his beliefs and his attitude toward Matt Hale and Benjamin Smith, because Benjamin Smith was the martyr to the Church of the Creator. They created a T-shirt with his name and logo on it. They're selling it. They think he was a great figure. And Dan Hassett is the Northwest Director of the Church of the Creator. He's a big person in this organization. He's been in racist circles for the better part of 10 years that I know of. He testified in 1992 before the Montana Human Relations Commission and talked about mud people then. So this isn't something new. And I think to take the attitude that this just exists and that people like Matt Hale and Dan Hassett should be allowed to go their own way. Everybody's different. Everybody has certain beliefs. Everybody can take their own separate course. I think that's fundamentally destructive to a democracy, which is based upon the concept that we work together and that we live together and that we collectively and cooperatively and democratically progress together. Certainly we have individual rights,
Right.
but the rights that Matt Hale and Dan Hassett and Slim Deardorff and the other reverends, they don't want rights for those people who are Jews, who are blacks, who are Asians. They don't want rights for those people. Now,
Right.
surely that's clear enough.
And that's just outside our system. And
Outside our system.
yeah, I mean that's not America. America's diversity of all people having rights and striving for equality among all people.
Well, that's why it seems to me that the next time you see Dan Hassett, you should speak very forcibly to that point. I think you just
Well, I
made a
haven't
good
seen him
point.
for a while, but you know, when I'm sure it'll come up because when you do see Dan, he does talk about
Yeah.
racially charged things.
Racially charged things, I think, is
Yes, I'll
kind of a
put it that way.
euphemism, just a bit.
So, but you know, I'd like to know where you think that you draw that line, though, of and how you do it with people, because I think that is an issue that is not well enough defined, and certainly not in society. Because, as I say, it's happening in the schools. It happens all over the place, even in Missoula, which
Sure.
is a pretty insulated and tolerant place, maybe too tolerant in some ways.
Well, you know, I think parents, I'm both a parent and a teacher, and as a teacher, I made sure that any intolerance that was exhibited in my classroom, racial intolerance, sexual intolerance, sexual preference intolerance, was simply, I made it known that it was simply unacceptable, and no one who exhibited it could stay in my classroom. It's also incumbent on me and you as a parent to raise our children in exactly the same way. There are certain things that are simply out of bounds.
Right.
And you know, if we have that responsibility with our children, and we have it in our schools, and I think we have it with our friends, we have that same responsibility in our workplace, and the way we make things happen the way they should is to never simply let them go. When you hear someone making a racist comment, say something. When you hear them using racist jokes, say something. Don't let it go by. It's not okay. It hurts people, and sometimes it kills them.
That's not easy to do, what Ron just said.
Oh, no, I know. I worked for a woman who had left Europe during the Holocaust, and she was Jewish, and she used to say a lot of things about Christians, and quite frankly, I did let it go by. I was brought up as a Christian, but I knew with what she'd been through, too, that, you know, I have to take someone's life experience into consideration.
Well,
But not even then. I mean, that always rationalizes it. It always rationalizes it.
It does, but, you know...
It would be one thing to say that a bad thing happened to me. It's another thing to say that all people are bad because this bad thing happened to me.
No, yeah, but, you know, but we're none of us perfect, you know, and I know most of us try to improve ourselves and hopefully in relationships with others improve the way that we all are and bring society and civilization up by notches and evolve, as you were saying. But some people don't even have that in their minds at all. You have to even wonder if they have minds. But yet they're alive, they're breathing, they have the same rights as you and I. And so, you know, I still have to me, there's still a question as to when someone exhibits this racist type of behavior. I try to understand where it comes from in them, first of all, because sometimes there's just been such an amount of cruelty. It's just like with school shootings. I try to understand where in the heck is that coming from, because I can't see myself doing that ever. I can't put myself...
But wouldn't it be great if every time your racist friend, if you had one, saw you coming, said to themselves, yeah, geez, I better not say anything around her. She's such a pain in the ass. You know, she just gives me a whole ration of you-know-what every time I open my mouth. So they stop opening their mouth. That's a victory. That's a big victory. And if you can do that, and I do that, maybe we'll shut up a half a dozen of them.
But you're saying to shut them up. I'd rather understand and try to work through with them.
Oh, yeah,
They
that's
come to
the
my
first part.
understanding, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's
I guess
fine.
that's just a different way of looking at it, because to me you're saying that that's not being a friend to me.
It's not just keeping them from expressing themselves.
No.
It's saying to them that there are certain ideas that you find offensive and you will not simply stand by and listen to and agree to in a tacit form. So I think it's good for your friends to know where you stand on these issues. It's much better that they know that certain ideas are not acceptable to you than you have to be quiet and absorb all the poison that comes down the pike and say, oh, well, you know,
Well,
that's not
some of it's poisonous,
acceptable.
but you know, when I speak to my Hmong friends, I make jokes about me as an American, and
You're allowed.
yeah, but you know, there has to be some give and take there too. There was a different dynamic when I was
Yeah,
growing up with a lot of this.
if you
that was more gentle.
the Hmong have to decide what's okay for them. You
Right,
can't
right.
decide. You can decide what's okay for you as an American and
Right.
say all sorts of things about yourself as an American. That's okay. You
Right.
get to decide. Jews get to decide, blacks get to decide, women and homosexuals get to decide.
Yeah, right. And
Not Dan Hassett,
no,
not Matt Hale.
But see, like I said, I didn't even watch Matt Hale because I knew he wasn't for me. But I'll let you go because you probably do have other callers.
Well, I appreciate your call. I think
Okay.
this was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, that was an interesting call from another person who has some firsthand knowledge
Isn't a small town wonderful?
of the Church of
Everybody knows somebody.
And you might wonder if, from the caller's perspective, if it matters whether you know this somebody or that somebody. But I think this is the human side. She had seen Dan Hassett when Dan Hassett was not armed, when Dan Hassett didn't have a Sieg Heil in front of him,
Right.
and when probably he was speaking fairly rationally. But when Dan Hassett and Matt Hale speak as they do on these programs tonight and in subsequent weeks, we're going to see a little more blatant anti-Semitism and racism with the gloves off. This program tonight was blatant enough, but in subsequent shows, Matt Hale really gets what I would call extreme.
Certainly that. Yeah, I think when you put several of these people together and they start reinforcing each other, it gets ugly very quickly. Very, very quickly.
You know, another point that this last caller made me think about, and that is this notion that silence on our part can be interpreted as complicity, and that's true of what you were saying about confronting someone who makes the racist remarks. Sitting in a bar, sitting at a restaurant, on the subway, wherever, and you hear this kind, especially if it's with people that you're interacting with. I've heard it in the bars frequently, directed mainly toward Indians. And it's difficult to confront that, but I think that's part of what it means to be responsible.
And you know what? I had a lot of practice doing this in my workplace. And it gets easier. And the reason it gets easier is people begin to expect it. They'll say something and they'll whirl around and find you there and say, oh my God, here we go again. So it gets less dangerous, it gets more effective, and it gets easier to do.
Right.
So I encourage everyone to give it a shot. It makes you feel good. It does.
Plus, it communicates something. I mean, it communicates that all people have value and that turning human beings into objects through such things as racial epithets simply isn't a good thing. And if you sit back and be quiet, it's approval.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone sees me sitting back being quiet when somebody's going on with racial epithets and so on, they say, well, it must be okay.
Yeah,
It must be
exactly.
okay,
Especially your kids.
especially your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all familiar with that famous statement that the German theologian Martin
Right.
Niemöller made, that first they came for the communists, then they came for the homosexuals, then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak up to any of these, and finally, I was the only one left, and they came for me.
And there was no one left to speak.
No one left.
Yeah.
So basically, I think what responding to racism does, it does something for you.
Oh, yeah.
And it's important for you. It's not just important for the person or for the larger society. It's a statement of your own values. And
Well, I mean, I think we heard that with the last caller. I mean, this is a woman who obviously would do something if she could figure out what it was. You know, she felt that her kids were being victimized by a system that allowed this sort of thing to go on, and apparently she had not yet found a way to have some input that was doing anything. So, I think it's essential for her and others like her, because I was there myself, and I'm still not great at it, but I'm getting better by speaking out. It's essential, and it does do a lot for you, and it tells people that certain things are just not okay, and that's important.
yeah, it's one thing to make this statement on paper as a grand pronouncement. It's something else when it happens right in your presence. And when you have to hear it and you feel that sinking sensation in your stomach, should I open my mouth and say something?
It's hard.
Am I going to be criticized for that? Will I look foolish? Will there possibly be any physical harm that will come to me? And it's usually not the physical so much as it is the psychological fear that you have. That just taking a stand is hard for a lot of people, especially when it's on such a charged issue as race or religion.
It's true, but once you do it, once your friends know who you are, it's easier. But you're right, it's very difficult at first. I let a lot go by in my workplace that I never should have let go by before I finally made my wants known. And, it's not that I may have helped to change some people's minds. I don't know. I certainly hope so. But what I do know that I accomplished was I changed the nature of the conversation in my workplace. And I changed it for the better. And I helped do that, and other people joined me, and it was a good thing.
Sure. I think the classroom, I was a teacher for 30 years in the university, and I think the classroom is that laboratory where you do get, any teacher has to expect that they will get all kinds of opinions, and it's the way the students see you dealing with those opinions, which range the gamut, that helps them grow and try to make up their own minds, and hopefully they'll make them up in a way that's clear and is devoid of this kind of racist malarkey that we get from Hale. We know they're going to be around. Racism isn't going to disappear, but I think, as Al Smith said about the ills of democracy, the only cure for the ills of democracy is more democracy, in his New York accent. And that's true, I think, of this kind of hate speech, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Hiding it doesn't work. Hiding it doesn't work. And I think that, we put Randy Ammon in charge of MCAT when we first opened up because of his success in doing exactly this sort of thing. There was a series of racist programming that was presented in Pocatello, Idaho. There was a great sentiment for not allowing it to air. Randy said no and organized counter-programming, much as we're doing here, I hope. I hope we're as successful down the road as he was there. And that set the tone. More speech rather than less speech is always the preferred way.
Exactly. That was the White Aryan Resistance,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, I think so.
War,
Yeah, war.
or Tom Metzger's.
Tom Metzger's
Metzger's
tapes, yeah. We'll probably see some of those before it's over.
Well, he
I
was,
think they had to sell all those to
Did they?
satisfy
Oh,
the
yeah,
judgment
right,
in Oregon.
right.
right. Yeah, that was another successful lawsuit.
Another one.
Yeah.
Brought by the Southern Poverty Law Center, Morris Dees.
Morris Deeds, boy.
Great victory there. That was the case of a racial incident involving an Ethiopian
Yes.
student who was
It was lynched.
bludgeoned by skinheads who beat him senseless with a ball bat. And that was very effective.
Well, I'm glad we got some calls tonight,
Yeah.
and I'm happy that we got to talk with people on the phone and each other. I enjoyed it.
Are we still on the air? There was one point I did want to make, and that was when we were told by
We'll quit when we're ready.
Emmett, who seemed to think that Matt Hale was a Christian and that this was Christian identity doctrine. Matt Hale despises Christianity. He's not a Christian identity adherent, even though there is some part of that message that sounds like Christian identity. He believes that Christianity is a plot foisted upon us by Jews, and he's not Christian. His religion is the white race.
So what does he believe?
The white race.
That's it.
That's it.
That is it. He believes that they are God's gift. If he believes in a God, I don't know, but that the white race has shown itself to be superior throughout history, in his view.
Yes, that's where the mud people come from, right? If there hadn't been white people, then we'd still be rolling around in the mud. Everyone else would be rolling around in the mud.
Okay.
Are we off the air? Are we on the air? We're on the air. All right.
And are there any callers out there?